second. Let's see. I think it's saying prepping for. Hi, Farouk. Thanks for joining.
Hello, you're welcome.
It's saying setting up to go live on Facebook, and I believe we are live as well. So welcome and thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining us today. If everybody else can turn off their camera so we can focus on whoever's speaking would be great. Not their camera, sorry, mute their buttons. I think that's what happens. I don't know how it gives you focus. I'm trying to figure out how we do the focus stuff. So thank you so much for joining, Rebecca. We've been doing Sundays for a few Sundays now, and it's been fun. I've really enjoyed doing these, and I have some regular guests that join me, and then we're live on Facebook as well.
I watched the day you had Tim Sabranti on. That was really fun.
Okay, yeah, that was popular. Tim is always popular.
Yeah.
And yeah, so thanks for joining us, and let's get started here. Nothing formal. We just have a casual conversation. I go and get my coffee and get to drink that with everybody.
I'm gonna have my almonds.
Nice. Somebody's got water. We've all got a flavor of what we drink on a Sunday morning at 11. Great. So how's it going, Rebecca? How's the campaign been going? How are things going? Are you guys on recess now, or?
We are. We went on recess. So constitutionally, we had to finish our legislative session by the last day in August. We went until midnight. We even went a little bit past, because for those things that had urgencies, we were allowed to go after midnight. So we went until about 2 on September 1st, and then we went on recess, and now I'm back home. But absolutely, I mean, work doesn't stop, right? So much to do here. I got to go this week and see White Pony Express's launch of their mobile hygiene unit, which is really exciting for our homeless population, that we have a new way to bring hygiene to our homeless on the streets, which is obviously so critical right now. So around the district, serving all of our constituents, unemployment continues to be something we're spending a lot of time on. A lot of constituents who need our services, given the disaster that has been EDD the past 6 months. And so yeah, but working for constituents here in the district, but also on recess legislatively. So spending a little time on the campaign as well. Although, as you know, things are so different under COVID. Yeah. How's it going for you?
It's been going well. Again, the last push, ballots have already dropped. Apparently they're reaching people's mailboxes. So that's been super early. So, with the campaign, just dropping literature, we call it the no contact canvassing. But it does energize me so much more, because I'm out there, I run into somebody with their dog or something and get to talk to people. So it's been fun. We've been, writing postcards, making phone calls, and so whatever we can to get the word out. One thing, when you mentioned White Pony Express, and they're doing great things to really help the community. I'm also signed up through the volunteer program through the state, the governor. And one of the things I keep getting an ask about is the Contra Costa food bank up in Concord. It's a great opportunity to volunteer right now. A lot of seniors used to volunteer there. And because of COVID, they're not getting the volunteers they needed. So just kind of wanted to bring that in, and people who are watching and might be interested, it's actually a great thing to go with your entire family, package food and really distribute it. It's a couple of hours, they've got multiple slots. So I plan to do that. I always, whenever I go there, it's so well organized, and it's fun actually. I've taken my Girl Scouts there. We've gone with the Rotary, and, we've just gone as a family, and, to do it on Thanksgiving or something. And so they have a shortage of volunteers. So whoever can give a couple of hours on a weekend or something, they can certainly use the help.
Yeah, and they're doing a great job with their COVID precautions too. So even though you're there in person, they're taking it really seriously, which is important. But yeah, the need for food has just skyrocketed with the pandemic and the unemployment. And so our food banks are serving more than they're accustomed to serving. And they need all the volunteers they can get. And luckily we have an amazing community that steps up at every opportunity. So we've seen the community coming together to both provide food and resources to the food bank, but also volunteer. So yeah, keep in mind, because as the holidays come, one of the things that I'm really concerned about is that a lot of our youth get their food through school, right? They get lunch and breakfast, even with virtual learning, they can pick it up, but during the holidays, they don't have access to that. So we got to keep in mind that we'll need to ramp up food for kids.
Yeah,
to keep.
I mean, I've heard so many parents even, you know, talking about how they've used the food program through the schools because they're working full time and they're doing everything else. And it's been hard to cook food and do lunch and all of that. So, you know, a lot of parents have been using that program. I also had San Ramon Valley Islamic Center reach out to me, and they have a huge supply of food, which they would love to give out to the larger communities, and they're looking for venues as well. So, you know, any opportunities you guys see, anybody you hear, sometimes we just don't hear because we don't hear, right? So that's why it's important that anyone who hears about this, reach out to me, reach out to Rebecca, so we can really connect you with the resources as well.
We're going to ramp up some food drives. So
I think that's going to be very important. It's, you know, it's impacted a lot of people, and people that may historically not have needed some of the help. And how do we, you know, make sure that they feel comfortable reaching out, and, you know, we can help them in a way that helps them but doesn't make them, you know, feel, I would say, you know, feel bad or anything like that.
Well, and the other thing is knowing where to go. So when I'll pitch 211, which is our county line that anybody can call to find out what resources are available for any need you have. So if you're hungry and you're looking for our food, for where you can get food, if you're a victim of domestic violence, looking for resources, 211 is a great number that's answered by the county that can provide you with sort of where to go for whatever resources you need.
Thank you for sharing that. So ballots have dropped, and people are getting them in their mail. And I know one of the topics of our discussion today was going to be how to safely vote in San Ramon. And I'd love to hear, you know, what your thoughts are there.
I know I haven't gotten my ballot, but I know that many people have, and some of my friends have already started voting. Oh, I see some people on the call showing off their ballots. Yes, everyone should vote. Everyone should vote, and it is safe. So we passed a law, so everyone's going to get a vote by mail ballot. I'm an in-person voter. I love going in person with my kids every year. So for the first time, I'm going to be voting by mail. And I know there's a lot of nerves about putting it in the mailbox, but we've done a lot to make sure that's not going to be a barrier here in California. Even if it slows down, it has to be postmarked by election day, but it has weeks to get to the registrar and still be valid. So don't worry about putting it in the mailbox. No postage needed. Fill out the ballot and put it in the mail. But if you're nervous about the mail, that's fair. I understand. So there's drop boxes. There's drop boxes in all of our cities. And there's actually quite a few in San Ramon. So that's a great way to vote if you feel like you don't want to put it in. There's one at the San Ramon Community Center, one at the Doherty Station Community Center, San Ramon City Hall, Costa Senior and Community Center, and the San Ramon Permit Center. So 5 locations in San Ramon to drop your ballots, which is really awesome. And one of them is also a voting center. So we do have voting center. You have 2 voting centers in San Ramon, I thought. Yeah. So you can also go to voting center. If you need a new ballot, they can print it out for you. If you want same day registration, which is accessible here in California, or to register to vote, you can do that at your local voting centers. So those things are still available for you. If you need translation, anything, show up at your voting center. You can also turn it in at your voting center. So we don't have traditional precincts this year, but you still have voting centers you can go to get that assistance. And I love the drop boxes. There's one in my city hall. I live in Orinda, that I'll probably be using because it goes straight to the registrar. If you put it in that drop box, it feels very secure. But make sure to get your ballot in, because everybody needs to vote, and that representation up and down the ballot should be who you want it to be, right? Vote for mayor, vote for city council, vote for all the things you have an opportunity. I think Central San didn't make it onto the ballot because I think it was uncontested, but there's many races to pay attention to. School board, you've got some active school board races in San Ramon Valley. So and I won't even start with the propositions. It might take people quite a while to get through their ballot, given all of those, but please do fill it out. Make sure to engage. And the League of Women Voters has some incredible resources if you have questions about some of those propositions as well.
Thank you. Yeah. And I'm more of a historically vote from my kitchen table. I enjoy, I don't like the stress of being there and then looking up somebody. I'm like, I have no idea. I should have done my homework. So I like to have all my material up on my dining table, sit down with the kids and, and discuss and make sure who we're voting for. So I've always done that. And so for me, it's like, yeah, well, people, and I actually convinced some of my friends to do that. And they're like, we like this so much more because we can actually look through some of the propositions, because honestly, who remembers the number of every proposition and what it really means, and the details and why you should and you should not support it. So it's actually a great opportunity right now for voting from home, that you can kind of sit down, walk through. You don't have to fill it all in one go. You can look up, you can do your research, you can look up the websites, and then be like, okay, this is who I want. And you have enough time, right? Or more than a month now to look through. Just make sure they don't keep sitting on your dining table or that outgoing mailbox. Sign them and put them in. Like you said, in San Ramon, we have, I believe, 5 locations. City Hall will close at 5, I think, but almost all the other locations are 24-hour. And so super easy to, fill your ballot, make it a day, take pictures, enjoy that too. And make sure to vote. San Ramon's going to be a little different this year. We've never done district elections. So even though the mayor race is at large and everybody in San Ramon will get to vote for the mayor, and I hope you vote for Sabina for mayor. But for the council races this year, it's District 1 and District 3 that are going to get actually ballots for the districts. So not everybody is going to be able to vote for city council. We changed this last November when the city was actually sued for not having representation. And so we had to go to districts, and right now I'm at large, but my district is District 4, in 2 years when that comes up. So people will get to vote. The funny thing is, we have this one district in a neighborhood where one side is one district, the other side is the other. So people, I know, are a little bit confused, but when you get the ballots, same with the school board, everybody will not get an opportunity to vote for the school board because those are in districts as well. So your local ballot is certainly, the local races are going to be a little bit interesting and different depending on where you live in San Ramon. Yeah, I like dropping it in City Hall. I know we're going through a little bit of construction, but the voting is going to be, the box is going to be there.
And if you don't get your ballot, we should add, right? I mean, so ballots are supposed to drop this week. You should expect it. If you don't, go online and ask where it is. It's not, you can figure it out, and it's not too late to register if there was some glitch. So for Contra Costa residents, go to cocovote.us to inquire if your ballot doesn't arrive. And for Alameda County residents, if you're tuning in, it's acvote.org. So if that ballot doesn't arrive, inquire, because we want everyone to be able to vote.
Yeah, and the last day to register to vote is October 15th, right?
I don't know off the top of my head, so I'm not going to say that.
Yeah, I believe that's it.
You can get that answer. Call what it is.
Yeah, I know. I look at that calendar. So yeah, if you have just moved to a new place or new city, or people are doing that as well, new address, make sure everything is updated on your end, and you make sure you can check your ballot. I believe you can. I mean, there's multiple ways now you can check and make sure that your ballot is. You can track it. Actually, there's a link that lets you track that. I'll put it later on in the Facebook Live.
Yeah, it's on the Secretary of State website. It's like, where's my ballot? On the Secretary of State website. And it's exciting because you can see when your ballot's counted. And I have to say, though, as someone who had a sort of lengthy ballot counting experience at the end of my election in 2018, I had the opportunity to see the Contra Costa and Alameda County Registrar of Voters do their work. And it is incredible the lengths that our local Registrar of Voters go to count every single ballot. And I'm curious to know how they're going to do it this year, because there was so much person power that went into checking every signature or checking every page of every ballot. If you make a mistake on one page, or like you and your partner accidentally put 2 of the same pages in the ballot, they'll throw that one out, but they'll count the rest of the pages. So they do everything they can not to invalidate any part of your ballot, even if maybe there's part of it they can't count, they'll count the rest. So I was super impressed, and I'm sure it'll be just as wonderful this year, but hopefully some extra COVID precautions, because they were all sitting in a warehouse together doing the work.
So next, the topic of conversation would be climate action and wildfires, which are like at top of everybody's mind. And what is the state doing about it? How do cities align? And what can we do moving forward together to make sure we are taking advantage of what's coming from the state and implement it at the local level too.
Yeah, this is one of those areas where I think people don't give enough credit to their local electeds in how much you all can do to make a huge difference in climate action. Because, if all of our cities take good action together, it will make a huge difference. And kudos to cities like San Ramon that have already gone to community choice energy. That's an incredible way that cities have taken steps to reduce our reliance on dirty energy sources and move to more wind and solar. And many of the residents in those cities are now getting 90% of their energy produced through clean sources, which is awesome. So there's a lot that's being done locally. I mean, we can talk, and I don't know how much our listeners want to geek out with us about trash and recycling, but it's a huge, huge issue right now. We used to send most of our recycling to China to be recycled, and that has shifted significantly. And now most of those things that people are putting into their recycling bin are not actually getting recycled. And so we've been taking some action at the state level to change that. We did a bill this year that's incredible that Assemblymember Ting authored that will require in California that your plastic water bottles contain 50% recyclable plastic, which will hopefully, we believe, create a market, right? Because they have to do it, we'll have to create a market that demands that recycled plastic, and hopefully we can build up a market where we actually do our own recycling here in California. But I mean, so much of those decisions about recycling are made at the local level. Every jurisdiction has different rules about what's recycled, what's not recycled. And I think we could be doing more locally to improve that. Although obviously we're trying hard at the state level because our reliance on plastic has increased with the pandemic, with the takeout and the way we're living. We're getting more things delivered, which makes sense because we don't want to go out, but all of that needs to be recycled in order for us to reduce our footprint on the planet.
Yeah, and here in San Ramon, we just went to a new garbage contract, waste disposal contract last year, and it's heavily reliant on now recycling and organics. And even I feel like, and it's gotten expensive to get, trash cans. So if you get the smallest one, you have the cheapest bill. One of the things I've done at home is changed habits actually and have 3 trash cans, which is making sure more and more the organics should be the biggest one in my, for me, more I can, because I think that was the one we missed in so many ways, with food and all of that, we just throw it in the trash. And so making sure we are also conscious of how we are putting our organics and in the trash, that's a huge part of how we're doing, recycling, and obviously part of the climate action plan. I've had a lot of questions from San Ramon residents, and especially our young residents, asking what we're doing about climate action. And I've been reading up a lot and talking to staff. Obviously, a lot of it is built into our general plan and how we are executing this. But as people are more curious, as we come together, as a city, how do we make sure that we have a strong climate action plan? I just found out there's a mayor's group around climate action and what the cities can do, and the mayors can come together to share ideas and see what practices we can implement. But a lot of this stuff comes from the state, right? As at the state level, there's legislation passed that we can bring it back and integrate it into our climate action plan to make sure. San Ramon is also being recognized at the California League of Cities conference for our climate action plans, because we are using electricity in a more efficient way, our street lights. And so they're recognizing us for that next week, which is awesome. And then we have the wildfires. Everybody's been concerned, the air quality has been bad. There's so much smog. And tell us about that, Rebecca. I mean, what are some of the actions the state is taking, and how do we make sure these are more preventative?
Yeah, no, I mean, you can't talk about climate change without talking about the wildfires, right? I mean, the emissions coming from these wildfires is catastrophic, right? So we have to both for the well-being of our communities, for the safety of our residents, and also for the future of our planet, we have to get control of these wildfires. And this year has just been, I mean, it feels like one wildfire after the next. I think today we can go outside because the air is finally cleaned up. But, even with, we had the Santa Clara Complex fire right here in Livermore. And I was out with Congressman Swalwell just a few weeks ago looking at the damage to a lot of our ranch land that has really impacted their well-being and their ability to do business. And so, although we don't see it, besides the smoke every day, it has touched our community, and it is touching every community. So what are we doing? We're doing as much as we can, but the president was just here, and he doesn't want to acknowledge that climate change is a huge part of this. Our changing temperatures, the winds, all of it is leading to the conditions that are resulting in these fires. And we obviously need to work with the federal government on the federal land. A lot of our forests are federally managed, and that's really critical, but we are doing everything we can at the state level. So here in Orinda, we were able to fund a pretty incredible shaded fuel break that as we looked at how our fire chief looked at how the fires were going to come towards the community, we were able to build a really significant fuel break that would hopefully stem the tide of a fire if it were to come based on wind patterns where they think it might. And we need to be doing more of that. We need to be working with our local fire departments to bring more of those resources into our wildland urban interfaces, right, where we know we're most at risk of having a fire that will hit our community, and get more of those fuel breaks funded through. And we continue, even with our budget deficit, to fund those wildfire mitigation efforts, because it's really critical. We know that in an economic downturn and pandemic, these fires aren't going to stop. And so we need to keep moving forward on that. So that's really critical. Also, I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about utility caused wildfires. We know that that has been a huge source of our wildfires. We know that here where we are serviced by PG&E, I don't think any of us, and I will say, I don't believe that PG&E is doing everything they can to mitigate the safety factors that would lead to a utility caused wildfire. So in collaboration with DA O'Malley, I introduced a bill that would have allowed our local DAs to enforce our safety regulations on our utilities, so that there's sort of a second level of enforcement. We have lots of safety regulations, they're just not enforcing them. And currently the PUC is the only entity that can do that. And we want to get local enforcement of those safety regulations. So if locally, they're not doing the tree maintenance they should be doing, they're not keeping the poles up to standards, that we have a local source, our district attorney's office, that can come in and get that stuff fixed. Because right now the DAs only have the ability to bring an action after a fire. And what we want is to stop the fire on the front end. So that bill didn't get a hearing in the Utilities Committee, but I've already talked to DA O'Malley, and we're bringing it back in January. We're going to fight that fight, because I think it's really, really critical that we hold our utilities to a higher standard to stop those utility caused wildfires.
Thank you for that. And then any other topic which is top of mind for you? Anything else you would like to share with our residents?
No, I mean, voting, right? I mean, I think everybody needs to vote. I say that every year or every 2 years, I guess, but this year it's really important. I think we need to show that no matter what, whether we're in a pandemic, whether the post office is slowed down, that we will exercise that constitutional right. It is our right to decide who represents us at every level of government. I always like to talk about how I hope people will, vote in every election. Sometimes, especially presidential, people show up. I know we're not showing up anywhere this year, but submit a ballot and they'll vote for president. They'll vote for Congress. But they then don't fill out the ballot further down. We see that in the numbers, right? They don't vote in the school board race. And I really think it's worth people's time to engage in those races. Often your city council, your mayor is who affects your life most day in and day out, right? So these are really important races that affect your life. And so I'm so happy to be here with Sabina, who I am proud to support in this mayor's race, and really help raise the profile of these local races that make such a difference for our community. And I know that, as San Ramon is struggling with sort of defining its future, as you mentioned, y'all have done a great job, and you continue to look forward. And one of the things that I think is really exciting has been our partnership on transportation, right? We talked about climate. Transportation is a huge part of that. And that 680 corridor is really lacking in transportation options, and we need to increase them and make sure that we have BART on either end. How do we create better connectivity so that both we reduce traffic, we reduce emissions, and we increase the lifestyle of those who are commuting for so long in our community. And I know that's something you've really been focused on and will continue to focus on in partnership with me at the state level and our wonderful congressman who's working at the federal level to bring resources home as well. So, you know, we all work together to make our communities' lives better and to help our climate.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons, you know, and that's one thing I talk about, that if elected mayor, for me, it's very important how we work together with all the different agencies and everybody who's part of this, right? As a city, we do a lot of things which directly touch our residents in a lot of ways. But then a lot of things are possible with funding from the state, with funding from federal and regional partnerships. We don't live in a little bubble where people don't go out and don't travel on 680 and 580. People are commuting. They're, you know, how we build connections. The bicycle plan is a huge thing for us right now, how we are connecting San Ramon, and through San Ramon, you know, we can't end the lines at San Ramon, right? They go into Danville, they go into Dublin, they connect to BART and all of that. So all of those things happen because we have the city level funding, but of the 127 million of San Ramon's budget, only 50 million comes from our revenue. The rest is all different funding sources that we go to for the state, the federal, county, and bring it back to, so, you know, basically help the residents of San Ramon. So it's so important to have those regional partnerships. And you've been such an amazing partner here. And I know there are some things which are my bucket list, which I would love to have in San Ramon and get state funding for it. So it's important, you know, for people to understand that their tax dollars go into San Ramon, but then there's so much more that we do here, which comes from taxes that were implemented more on the state level or the federal level. And we do go and ask for those. And sometimes we compete with those dollars. You know, if Dublin wants it and Danville wants it and San Ramon wants it, then how do you allocate your state budget and funding for different cities as well? And your office is in San Ramon, so which is great, you know, for the residents. I'm able to, you know, obviously whatever I can do to help our residents, I do. And if it's beyond my influence of control, then I'll forward them on to your office. And your office has been very helpful and also helping our residents navigate through a lot of this stuff. So you know, certainly the partnership's been great, and I really appreciate everything you've done for San Ramon. One of the key projects, and you can talk about this, is we're building an overpass over the Iron Horse Trail. And you want to talk a little bit about how you were able to help make sure that our costs remain stable?
Yeah, no, it's a really exciting project. And I think to your point about active transportation, right? I mean, we have such an active community. Many of us moved here because we love Northern California and getting on our bikes and hiking and doing all those things. And the Iron Horse Trail is this incredible active transportation corridor that can be used for recreation, but also can be used for many of our folks who are commuting via bike, which is really exciting. And so we partnered together, and again, working with, one of the things that I'm excited to help with is working with Dublin to say, how do we better connect to BART in Dublin? How do we work among cities to really improve that incredible asset that we have already in our backyard? And so one of the projects that I worked on with San Ramon was on Caltrans properties. So on state property, we were allowed to use a design build process that was more efficient, right? You know, we didn't have to go back and forth once, you know, design it and then find out that it was too costly and go back to the design and pay again to get it redesigned. But instead the designer and the builder could work together. And so we brought that process to our cities, extending it from state land so that for the overpass, San Ramon could use that design build process, make sure that they were cutting costs and take their transportation dollars further. So even right now, we don't have a ton of resources given the economic situation, we need to be working in every way to make sure we're making the wisest use of our limited resources. And this was an exciting project that we worked on together and with the county, with the Contra Costa Transportation Committee. So again, a partnership of the county, the state, and our local city to bring policy that would take those dollars further and hopefully get that overpass done. I was just at the farmers market in San Ramon yesterday mentioning that overpass, and a resident from Danville was very excited by that idea because it's a tough crossing there on the Iron Horse Trail. So, you know, these are exciting projects that affect, like I said, local projects that affect our everyday lives. So hopefully we'll get to see that come to fruition soon.
Yeah, and it's taken San Ramon councils and our city staff quite a few years to collect the funds to be able to fund this. And we don't want to go into where, we get into the design phase and then we just don't have enough funds and then we stop it again. So these little things make such a big difference in, how we're able to build and execute our projects as well. So just we wanted to call that out because it's something which nobody sees, but it's something which is critical in us managing our city budget and our funding, which we've worked so hard to acquire for some of the things we wanted to do in San Ramon. Any questions from the audience? I know we're trending towards the end of this, but I do want to give an opportunity. Billy's got something.
A comment first and then a question. So I represent San Ramon on the CCTA Citizens Advisory Committee. I mean, I'm sure both of you know this, but the CCTA released the first half of the year revenue data, and the drop was not as significant as anticipated. They were anticipating a 15% drop because of COVID, but it was only 3%. So you're talking about transportation revenue. So that's pretty significant. My one question, we talked about recycling, and one of the things you hear when you're out and about and grumbling is about CRV and the redemption availability. And I believe there's some legislation passed recently trying to help that. Any news to tell on that front?
So I don't think it made it. I'd have to double check, but so we looked into that and we were told, hold off, we're working on the CRV. And I don't think the legislation made it. It was I believe it was part of the package that we're working on recycling, right? We're doing a huge recycling package, and you may have read in the news, it died on the last night of session because it didn't have the support it needed to get off the floor. I supported it. I know how bad our plastic situation is, but also for the CRV is really, it's something that actually has come up quite a few times with my constituents, right? We pay this fee and there's no way to get it back anymore. And so the vision really was, how do we create, again, a model market where you bring back your recycling, we then have the infrastructure to recycle that thing. And then you're purchasing in the future items that are have additional recycling content in them. So it is a bill that I believe will come back next year, but it's still a work in progress.
Good, thank you.
Yeah.
Dave, you had something? Yeah.
Yeah, and I take your point about how local leaders really have more of an effect on people's lives than maybe what's happening on the federal level. But people often will focus on the federal level. On the state level in particular, do you have resources or suggestions so that people can be more informed without going through and reading, the text of every bill? I mean, I've been on the websites before, and sometimes I find it hard to navigate all the bills that are going through, and many of them are very important and have an effect on my life. Yeah,
no, I think that's a great question. So I would say one great resource is if you know an area you're super passionate about, organizations are a really great way of doing it. The Sierra Club has a watch list of bills, for example. So does the California League of Conservation Voters. They pick sort of their top bills. The Chamber of Commerce does the same thing if you're interested in business related legislation. Obviously, it's a fraction of the bills we're doing, but it's sort of the hot bills, which at least narrows it down for you. They go through every single bill and decide which ones do we think are the most impactful. So that's one great way, is to find an organization you believe you're aligned with, and look at what legislation, and they'll often have a summary of it. Another way I think is most people don't subscribe electronically to our Sacramento newspapers, and Cal Matters is a great source of what's happening in the Capitol. And so they'll cover sort of more inside Sacramento laws, and that's a great way to see what are people talking about, what bills are hot. Again, we move thousands of bills, so it's pretty impossible for you. I have a staff of 4 to help me get through it all, but again, those are great ways to do it. If there are other areas of interest, we're happy to sort of point you in a direction of an organization that might be on the right path for what you're looking for and what legislation is going to affect you. There are housing organizations, there are we have wonderful, actually, senior services organizations do the same thing for bills that affect seniors. So there's lots of different NGOs that track our legislation and how it's going to impact the community. And then they say whether they're pro or con, right? And you may or may not agree, but usually they'll give you insight into what it is that we're doing and what's going to make the most difference in the year to come.
Great, I really appreciate it. And that was Cal Matters, that newspaper you mentioned?
Cal Matters, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and so for our cities as well, League of California Cities makes, we have our monthly conference at the mayor's conference, and then we have the Tri-Valley, and they bring a lot of these bills to the electeds as well. Yeah, again, these open meetings, anybody can attend, but that brings a good point of how do I make sure that as I'm getting this information, I'm also, because they will specifically talk about how these bills are going to affect and impact the Tri-Valley specifically, and our residents. And so they will bring that to our attention. We will have some action to take as a Tri-Valley. In addition, we have a consultant for DC as well as a Tri-Valley, who keeps, who looks out for us and looks out for the Tri-Valley. And again, like I said, funding sources and bills that might impact and affect us. So they make sure we are made aware and we take some action as kind of a collective mayor and conferences. But I think that puts some ideas in my head as well, as to, how do we make sure that I help kind of spread that around as well so people are aware.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, and I think you have one as well, Sabina, is we do have a mailing list you can sign up for.
Yeah.
And we send out emails probably quarterly. We don't like to bombard people, sort of what my legislation is, legislation co-authoring, hot topics. So that's another great way. And I think, Sabina, you have a newsletter as well you send out.
Yeah.
Now that's more limited of scope, of course. If there's an issue you're really passionate about, I would recommend looking up those organizations. ACLU is another great one for people engaged in sort of the conversation around police reform and racial equity. They track a lot of our bills and engage. So yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right. I think we're right at 11, 33 or something.
Look at us, right on time-ish.
Right on time. It always goes a little over, but we enjoy these conversations so much. So thank you so much, Rebecca, for joining. Hopefully you'll be able to join me at the farmers market. We will make sure they have space because they're getting popular. And I'll let you know, but thank you everybody. Dave and Matthew, Billy, Farouk and Adil for joining us on Zoom. And everybody who joined us via Facebook Live. We will continue to have these conversations, and as if I'm elected mayor, I will continue to make sure that I continue the breakfast with the mayor. That has now become virtual. So if you guys haven't attended, Friday mornings at 9 a.m., Mayor Clarkson does a breakfast, and that's been very informative. And Rebecca's been there, and we continue to give information around COVID. So we've changed how we communicate.
I was just looking at the pictures from our races 2 years ago when we were out with my then 4-year-old knocking doors in San Ramon. And nobody slammed the door in his face. Not that anyone slammed the door in San Ramon, but they definitely came to the door to see our kids.
He was so cute. He loved ringing bells.
He loved it. The doorbells were the best part. He's like, I get to ring the doorbell only once.
I know, I miss talking to people. So I was, your Facebook and all this other Google kind of tells you 2 years ago, this is what you were doing.
Yeah, no, I know. It was funny. I was looking for a picture to post something, and I found those pictures of us out on the streets with him, and it was really brought back all these memories. I wish we could be out talking to voters in that way, but we will be at the farmers market. So come visit us and you can ask us whatever questions you have.
Thank you, everybody. I will talk to you next Sunday. Bye.
Have a good one. Take care.
Bye, guys.